Wait, Resper, do you want to debate Times2?
Who's Times2?
This dude.
Oh, the dude who's just
Yo,
up.
what's up, dude?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know
I'll
what? Sure,
debate
I'd like to
any
see
other
how, like,
pro-choicer.
yeah. I'd like to see how my argument fares against his. So what was your argument once more? Could you just like summarize it? Because I was listening to your last debate, so it shouldn't take too long for me to remember.
Intrinsic value is normatively primitive. If it's normatively primitive, then it's non-gradational. If it's non-gradational, then you have to apply the same ethics standards to a fetus as a full-grown human.
Okay. Okay, definitely. Notes app. Let's go through each of those like terms one by one. So you said intrinsic value is normatively primitive, and if it's also non-degradational. And since it's non-degradational, where'd you go after that?
Gradational, not gradational.
Gradational, like graduation.
No.
Gradation. What does gradational mean?
Like it can increase. So something that's gradational means that it increases over time.
Okay, so normally primitive and non-degradational, which means. What'd you say again? I'm asking for like a repeat.
Oh, I thought that was like rhetorical. What do you mean? It means what are you asking for clarification on?
Yeah. I'm going through all your terms one by one, and then we'll go through the terms. I want you to like define them and then tell me how they relate.
Normative primitivity just means that when we're discussing some sort of normative concept, we're going to say that it's irreducible. Intrinsic value is just to say that something has value in itself rather than as some sort of means.
Of course.
What else do you want clarification on?
I wanted your whole like line of logic. You said it was You said it had an intrinsic value which was normally primitive, and it was also non-gradational. Because it's non-gradational, you said something else, and I forgot what that something else was.
Then the same set of ethics are going to need to be applied universally.
Okay, so ethics. Definitely. Now, I'm just going to strike at the heart of it. So you said it has intrinsic value. Where does it receive this intrinsic value? What is exactly being valued? Is it like the life of the human? And then lastly, why should I adhere to that value?
I'm sorry, which question did you want me to respond to?
Yeah, sure. Where does the intrinsic value come from?
Okay. Do you know what normative primitivity is?
You told me that it means it's like irreducible, like it cannot be reduced any further.
Okay, so then does that answer your question, or do I need to clarify that further?
Yeah, well, I believe that if you just want to like pin value on something, and then when you're asked about like why the value is there, you say that it's like irreducible. I feel like it doesn't really answer the question at all. You're kind of saying, oh, I value it because it's valued and it can't be any other way. I say it can be any other way. I say like a fetus doesn't really have value in my worldview. If it was like irreducible, I feel like it'd be so obvious that it has value, no matter the like worldview.
Yeah, so if we take like a concept, right, and we're to say that, well, I mean, the ought there would be just use like a Morian method, so we could just use an inference to the best explanation.
A Morian method is an inference to the best explanation. And what are you like inferring off of what explanation?
Well, I'm just to say that if it's the case that we like have some sort of proposition, and we know it with a high level of confidence, then we could just identify some sort of theory that would imply the negation of said proposition, and then we could compare the certainty insofar as the belief that's being proposed is more certain than any premise that denies a negation, then the theory would be rejected, and that would be the inference to the best explanation.
Definitely. And how are you like just inferring that a fetus has like this irreducible inherent value? I'd feel like the opposite would actually be more intuitive, no? Or are you just saying like, oh, it's human, so we should value it based on its humanity, and that's why it's just like intuitive to give it value?
No, I'm just saying that humans are going to have some sort of value that's going to be intrinsic normatively. And this value, because it's normatively primitive, it's going to need to be applied universally in terms of a gradation. So if you were to give an argument of ethics on the basis of like valuing it at a certain point, you're invoking some sort of level of gradation, which cannot be said for invoking intrinsic value, and such that there's no argument which can deny intrinsic value and its primitivity, then it's just going to hold.
Sure. So if we were to take a fetus, right? This fetus has some inherent, normatively primitive value. Is there any one thing I can take away from this fetus that would then also strip it of that normatively primitive value?
Like, can you give me an example of what you mean here?
Yeah, it could be either like an abstract or a concrete like property. For example, I could take away a finger, that won't take away the value. I could take away a hand, that won't take away the value. I could take away its life, that won't take away the value. What is something that could take away the value?
Yeah, it not being a human. So it's just valued in the whatness.
And the whatness. So if you took a how would like a non-human, like how would you take away the whatness of that? What would it look like after you've taken away the humanity of it?
Yeah,
Because it
they
sounds like
just
just a
wouldn't be
title,
a human.
as in like their DNA wouldn't be human DNA.
Well, it's not a title. It's relating to the essence, and the essence is just the whatness of a thing.
Yeah. So as in it wouldn't be human. What part of it wouldn't be human? Would the DNA wouldn't be considered like Homo sapien or what?
Any essential property which is relating to a human.
Could you give me an example? Is what I'm asking for.
Yeah, like an essential property would be rationality.
Rationality. So taking away the rationality that doesn't have would take away the value.
No. So rationality, which is actualized, is different than rationality, which is pertaining to a nature. So
Yeah.
if we're
So
discussing something pertaining to some sort of nature or
uh-huh,
some sort of essence or to some sort of subject, either
uh-huh.
three work, then
Yeah. So is this some
yeah,
hieromorphic
well,
dualism?
that doesn't necessarily relate to that. No, how did you get there?
Well, because you're talking about how it has like essence and matter, so there's like some sort of
Do
essence
you
and then
think
some sort of
that
matter.
nature or essence necessarily relates to hylomorphism and dualism?
Well, that's why I had to ask the question. I
Nature can
wasn't
just be
sure whether you took
used
the
like
hylomorphic dualist.
normatively to define some sort of concepts that we appear to observe.
Oh, definitely.
Doesn't
That we
necessarily
observe,
need
so
to
it's
be,
empiric, right?
yeah, it doesn't necessarily need to be invoked under some sort of like abstract or like
Yeah,
other type of
definitely.
concept.
Okay, then that question out of the way. What I'm going to ask you is, if you're talking about like empirically, like this, okay, so we know that this fetus is going to become rational because we've experienced it time and time again. So we'll label that like that track to rationality. It's nature, so it's in its nature to become rational, right? Why should I value that track? Like I feel like it's potential, right? It's potential to be rational. It's not yet rational, just because that nature has some sort of actual rationality held
Yeah,
within
that
it.
would go back to the fact that humans are going to have intrinsic value, and if intrinsic value is granted, then the argument leads to a non-gradational subset, which means that any philosophical theory that would imply the negation would lead to skepticism, and
Yeah.
skepticism in terms of explanatory power cannot be represented in an inference of the best
Uh-huh.
explanation properly to say that any of the premises which are given in the proposition would be able to be denied by skepticism, which means
Definitely. I
that the
find it
theory
hard
would
to
be rejected.
Yeah, I find it hard to just like accept some sort of normatively primitive intrinsic value like just there, because again, it sounds a lot to me like you're saying, oh, this thing is valuable because it's valuable, right? You didn't explicitly say that. It's not circular, but there's no grounding behind it. Just the fact that it's human isn't enough grounding, because humanity itself isn't really valued in my eyes. It's things about being human that is valued, such as rationality. We both value rationality. The difference is that you value the like rationality that's within the nature of this fetus rather than like the active rationality of people. I feel like that rationality that you're like actively, I guess, endorsing or valuing doesn't really have any value at all,
Well,
right?
no, all I'm saying is it's not something's valuable just because it has value. When we say something is valuable in itself, and I'm applying some sort of inference to the best explanation, all that I'm saying here is that if we were to say or we to deny intrinsic value, this would lead to some sort of incoherent, self-defeating, or something that's morally untenable, and
How
it would
so?
lead to
Let's
some
say
sort
I
of
would just
skeptic view.
refute it flat out. How would that be any
Yeah,
like?
because it
How's
leads
it
to
self-defeating?
skepticism, which is morally untenable. Can you tend
How does that
to
lead
the
to
moral
skepticism? What
certainty
am I
of
skeptical
skepticism?
about? Skeptical about the irreducible like
Yeah, because you're
value it has.
skeptical about something that's irreducible.
Skeptical. Okay, so
Yeah, you're
skepticism
applying
is
some sort of skeptic view because you're saying that a concept which is irreducible, why should I hold to it, or why does it exist?
right, because I only value qualities that are like justified
Yeah,
to have
yeah,
value
that doesn't
for.
really like it doesn't really matter what you value. The point is that if you deny something or try to apply a negation to something which is necessarily certain, then or is irreducible, then that's going to lead to skepticism. Do you understand?
Yeah, but just because you say that, oh, there's this value that I posit, and that if you don't like listen to it, you're skeptic. That doesn't mean that you are like, I guess,
Okay, hold on. Let
what's
me
the
just
word?
like
Like you still
reframe
have
what
to
I'm trying to
justify
say
the
here.
value. Is what I'm trying to say.
This is where we're at in the conversation, okay? So
Okay,
I
definitely.
tell you that something's normatively primitive, right? You
Uh
say,
huh.
I define all of the terms of my argument, and you
Right.
say, well, why should I hold to this? And then I just cite some sort of inference to the best explanation as an ought, which can functionally exist as an ought, and you don't really deny that. You go back to the concept. So can you tend to the fact that I've given you an ought and why you ought deny that
Yeah,
under
definitely.
some sort
What
of
was the
frame
ought
of
you gave
inference to
me?
the explanation?
Yeah, lay out the ought just like flat out.
Yeah, I gave an inference to the best explanation.
Tell me what the ought statement would be.
Yeah, you ought believe in intrinsic value.
Believe in intrinsic value. Yeah. Yeah, I just believe that's you don't ought to believe in intrinsic value. I say you ought to believe in anything that's justified, right? You
Yeah,
ought to
well,
have like
wait, hold on.
your beliefs
Inference
ought to
to
be
the
justified. How about
explanation.
that?
Yeah, well, normative primitivity though is discussing justification. It's not discussing deduction. So
No, it's not.
we're
I don't
literally
think
discussing
normatively.
justification when we're talking about irreducible things.
Yeah, calling a value normatively primitive doesn't like make it. It doesn't make it. How do I? That's not a justification to its value. Just saying, oh, it's normally primitive. That's basically saying, oh, I don't need to justify the value.
No,
Why
no,
not?
no. It quite literally, when we say you don't like prove intrinsic value the way that you would prove some sort of like mathematical concept or theorem. Intrinsic value, because it's normatively primitive, it is justified in the fact that it's irreducible. So it's not deductively proven. So we're
You keep
literally
saying,
in.
yeah, and the fact it is
So
irreducible. But when you say the fact
yeah,
that it is
that's. Wait, do
irreducible,
you
that's
think that
presupposing that the
irreducible
value exists in the
concepts
first place.
are not just justified? Do you not understand that? Can you
I
give
believe
me?
that irreducible
Yeah,
concept,
necessarily it's
yeah,
just going
they
to be
can be
justified. So I've already
necessarily it's
justified it.
justified,
So
but
I
there
don't
are
even know
also
where we're at right now.
justifications behind it, right? Like there is no, I can't think of another irreducible like factor, irreducible idea that cannot be justified outside of its irreducibility. Like there are there can still be other justifications or even like points of evidence that lead to proof of it being there in the first place. So when you say that nothing or something is normatively primitive, that assumes that that thing already exists. I'm kind of snipping it at the bud, saying I don't believe that that value exists in the first place to be called normatively primitive. Like I don't know where you're getting this value from, right? Can you give me an example of a normatively
Yeah,
primitive
I
thing
already
outside of your
explained
value
this.
that can?
Yeah, I already explained
Oh wait,
this.
could you finish my question for me? Because it sounds like you knew where I was going with that.
No, I literally just already explained this. Like I already
Yeah, could
explained
you finish my
why.
question for me?
Because if you deny normative primitivity of
Oh,
intrinsic
so yeah,
value.
so that's not the question I was going to ask actually.
Okay,
You are
what's your
asking a question I
question?
asked earlier. Yeah, I try not to repeat myself. My question was, could you
Yeah.
name me a normatively primitive value that cannot be justified outside of its normative the fact that it's normatively primate, right? Could you that's not your value. Primitive.
I'm sorry.
Primitive,
I
sorry.
don't even understand the question. Like
Yeah,
that
okay.
just wasn't
So
actually like posed
do
in a
you
proper
believe
way.
that yeah, definitely. I'll try to fix the wording. Thank you. So do you believe that this human value is the only thing that is normatively primitive?
Of course not.
Okay, definitely. Now, assuming that, can you give me an example of
Yeah,
something that
like
is
good.
no, that is normatively primitive that can be justified out or that cannot be justified outside of its normatively primitive nature?
Cannot be justified outside of its normatively primitive nature.
Yeah,
Are
because
you
like
serious?
for example, your value, it sounds like it can't be justified outside of the fact that it's normatively primitive, and I believe that the value itself doesn't exist to be normatively primitive.
It
And you're
doesn't.
saying that
Wait,
it
do you
doesn't need
think
to be
that something
justified.
that's justified needs further justification? Because that's essentially what your question leads to, which is nonsense.
I'm saying that the value doesn't exist at all. You're calling something that doesn't exist normatively primitive, and then saying that it's justified because you're calling it normatively primitive.
Okay, so do you think that something that's irreducible it just doesn't exist?
Things can exist and be irreducible, but I don't believe that the value exists. You're calling a non-existent thing irreducible and then calling it like real, acting as if
What do
it's
you
real.
mean you don't think that the value exists? What does that mean?
You said that there's some intrinsic like value within human nature that is normatively primitive. I don't believe that there is some intrinsic value within human nature at all.
Yeah, I grant that you don't believe that. How does that tend to what I'm saying?
Since I don't believe it, the fact that you're calling it normatively primitive is kind of conflicting because you're calling nothing normatively primitive. To
Yeah,
be
but I
normal,
already
yeah, you must first
justified
be
why
to be
you all
normatively
believe
primitive.
in that it's normatively primitive.
I feel like your justification probably just didn't reach me. Went through one ear out the other. Can you try justifying it again with like more natural language?
Well, I, dude, come on. Okay, I'll help you out here. Why do
Thank
I
you.
say
Yeah.
that a normatively primitive concept is justified?
Yeah, sure. We can start there, I guess.
No, I'm asking you. I'm literally asking you a question.
No, you told me that you already
What did I
justified the
say in
fact that
reference to
exists, that
that?
the value exists in. Sorry, what?
Okay. Yeah, can you repeat to me my question?
Your question was how can I already forgot your question. All right. Okay, so do you remember the
Really?
question I asked?
Okay.
Because it sounded like you were going to answer my question. right? That'd be a nice starting point because it sounded like you were
Well, yeah, I already
about to tell me
answered your
there.
question. That was my answer, and then I restated what my answer was, and then
Your
you just
answer
went
was in the
back to
form
your
of a
original
question?
statement, which was just to say that you don't believe in it, and I said that I grant that, and then I asked you another question, and then I asked you to repeat my question because you didn't understand the way that I was framing the question, and now we're at the point where you can't repeat my question.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, sure, pretty much. So are you gonna help me out, or do you want to continue playing mind games?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not trying to play mind games. I'm just like kind of astonished that you're not listening to the question and you don't remember the question I asked you like 5 seconds ago, which kind of implies some sort of bad
Well, I
faith
am
tactic
listening to the
here
question.
because it seems like you're just listening to respond rather than
If you
listening
consider
to my
ignorance bad faith,
words.
that's sure. This is a
Well, I
really new
mean, I
topic to me.
wouldn't.
I've never heard any of these words.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just saying that like because it was 5 seconds, in virtue of that fact, it seems like that's kind of like lame that you didn't remember it. But it's okay. I'll clarify for you, no issue. So
Yeah,
all I'm
thank you.
asking for you to clarify to me is why I said normative primitivity is justified.
Oh yeah, no, I already told you. I had no clue why one ear or not the other. I already told you that, and I asked you to explain it to me. That's what I was asking about, and you said
Oh,
you're
you
gonna
don't remember
like,
that?
yeah. Well, I didn't
Okay.
understand it because you just used a
So
bunch of concepts that I don't know.
yeah,
Like,
it's
yeah, I was
justified
fine.
because the
Mhm.
meaning that's basic and irreducible is not analyzable, which means that we're discussing something that's purely descriptive and non-reducible, which just implies justification.
It isn't analyzable. It's purely descriptive.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah. So what is it? What is this human worth describing? How is it like? What is it descriptive of?
No, it's not analyzable in a purely descriptive term. That's
In a
what that
purely
means there.
okay, so is anything that isn't analyzable in a purely descriptive term suddenly real and self-justified?
Yeah, it's justified because it's irreducible. You can't go back in the line and give some sort of further justification outside of the fact that the concept, if we were to do an inference to the best explanation, has no negation that doesn't lead to something which has more explanatory power to deny it.
I'm
So
I'm
because we're
trying to
not
think about this
okay,
because
we are not, do you think we're discussing deduction?
no, I don't
Okay,
even
so
know
if we're
what you mean
not
by deduction
discussing
when you say it in that
deduction
context.
and I'm invoking some sort of Morian method here, which is just to say that we're comparing some sort of certainty, then if the view, which is the negation of what I'm saying, is skepticism, then necessarily my view is going to be more certain, which under an inference to the best explanation, I would say that that theory should be rejected. Do you understand where we're at now?
Yeah, kind of. So okay, there's this
Okay.
irreducible like value within the human nature. How come this irreducible value has the like? Why does it have the priority over all of the actual values that we hold in our physical world, such as like bodily autonomy?
Since when was absolute bodily autonomy some sort of necessary ethic value?
I wouldn't say absolute bodily autonomy would be, but I'd say that this value is like, would you at least agree that this value is instantiated differently within a fetus than it would be a rational human adult?
I mean, this view would just be some sort of relative view, so I don't know how this can be conflated or compared to something which is universal. Necessarily, the universal is always going to defeat the relative.
So,
Yeah,
right.
closing statements.
Okay, yeah, thank you, definitely. My closing statements is just that I don't believe that there is this like intrinsic human value that he's talking about. But the argument that he set up for it makes it seem unavoidable. So I do want to look into that. No clue what anything he said was. I use TRIA. With TRIA, you can kind of account for a killing of a fetus that isn't immoral. And holding to that strictly, I believe, would have been the right move. You can search that up for you guys in the chat if you want to see what that is. Thank you.
Yeah, my closing statement is that it is inescapable and irreducible, so therefore there's like basically nothing you can say. GG's.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna do the crowd appeal point real quick.
Yeah, I think we should. Interesting.
Interesting, yeah. Right, so we have an official judge here. It's been keeping score of the points and whatnot. So, determinism, what do you think of this debate?
Yeah, so the thing is, I feel like the whole thing about the central move that Times is making is essentially some normative facts are irreducible. What is irreducible is not analyzable in purely descriptive terms. Therefore, such facts are justified, meaning they don't need further grounding. So there must exist a reducible universal value in human nature. Right. So there's certain inference which is legitimate, in my opinion. Like someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the inference is invalid, right? So it's treating irreducibility as let's call it epistemic priority, right? Like when you said we're discussing something that's not unrealizable in previous descriptive terms, meaning it's justified. I just say that I don't think that inference is valid, even granting normative primitivism. Yeah, because I just say that irreducibility is a claim about explanatory structure, and justification is going to be a claim about epistemic entitlement, and priority is going to be just a claim about normative ordering, right? So I don't think, because a fact can be irreducible and generally normative, and still not normatively overriding. I just say that he can just say that he can grant normative primitivism, but he just couldn't. He doesn't find intrinsic value that he doesn't find intrinsic value a normative primitive, right? I mean, do you follow,
Yeah.
Uzi? Like
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
absolutely. So like in terms of points, who is the winner here? Accounting for the
I'd say
correct
I'd
bill.
say I'd say just Resper by dismantling, or I'd say Resper by just Times not defending his view enough.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like
I
times
feel like
two has a question
I
about
don't
it.
want to debate you on that.
Yeah, do you want
I
to
don't.
debate me on it?
You
I
want to
mean,
debate
the
the
thing is,
judge?
Yeah,
why
so
are
can
you
you
debating
explain
that?
to me how normative primitivity, if we grant something's a normatively primitive concept, that it doesn't automatically mean that it's irreducible? Can you explain to me a normatively
No, I
primitive
agree.
concept?
No. I agree with you. I said normative facts are irreducible. What is irreducible is not analyzable in pre-descriptive terms. And you said
Okay.
therefore facts are justified, right? I'm pointing
Yeah.
out that
Do you think that
irreducible.
can you give
I
me
don't.
an
I'm
example
pointing
of
out.
some?
I'm pointing out that
Okay, yeah, sure.
irreducibility. Yeah, I'm pointing
Hmm.
out that irreducibility doesn't mean epistemic priority, right? So the point you said when you said we're discussing something that's not analyzable in purely descriptive terms, meaning it's justified. I just say that inference is not valid, even granting normative primitivism, right? Because once again, irreducibility is going to be a claim about explanatory structure. Justification is a claim about epistemic entitlement, and priority is going to be a claim about normative ordering, right? So
Hmm.
that's not
Yeah, but
there's
if
just
you're to say that X has epistemic priority over Y, if and only if X must be known or justified before Y can be known or justified, then if you're discussing some sort of dependence and justification and we're
right. You
relating it to
can,
the concept that I'm talking about and we plug this into some sort of equation and we were just to say that X is going to be discussing intrinsic value and it has priority over Y, which is skepticism, if and only if X must be known or justified before Y can be known, well, how do you even come to that conclusion?
right. So I'm gonna just say the structure, the core structural problem I had with your argument. I'm not gonna include your substantive additions right now. I'm just gonna say the core structure that you went with, normative primitive, therefore justified, therefore you ought to believe it. Am I wrong? Like, did you use
Uh,
that?
well, essentially, it's saying that if a concept is going to be inescapable and irreducible, meaning necessarily you're just going to have to accept it, then automatically that implies justification. Do you not grant that?
Well, I have my own take on it, but just I'm judging
What's
on
your
the
own take?
debate.
Hold
I'm
on, really
judging on the
quickly.
debate.
Times two. Is there like a name or like a law behind your argument here?
Yeah, like I'm
A
not.
name? What
Yeah,
do you mean?
just bouncing off like Resper's question. Like, is there like
No, there's
a
no
name?
name of this argument. It's my argument.
Okay.
I mean, well, this is argued in the literature a lot in terms of why intrinsic value is going to be normatively primitive, though I don't think this is fully functional under some sort of abortion perspective. I don't think that this is actually like outlined under that case, though
Okay,
it's
so
definitely relatable.
What was the law you were referencing?
What are you talking about? The Morian method? Is that
Yes.
what you're talking about? Yeah, the Morian method is just an inference to the best explanation, which is to say that we're just to compare certainty and a belief that is more certain in a philosophical premise that denies it, that they should be rejected insofar as it's more certain.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't want to like throw us into like full on debate again because like we've had our time. But like if you like okay, you substantiated this value. I have no clue how to take it down. I just have to like concede to the fact that it exists. But what do I have to actually act upon it? It seems like some abstract thing that doesn't really affect our physical world.
Well, hold on. What do you mean? Why? or why ought you act upon something which is necessarily true and has already been given an ought?
Which is necessarily
That's like
true. Oh, so are
that's like
you?
an
Do you like
infinite
hold
regress
some
of oughts at
objective?
that point. I mean, if I've
Do you
given
hold?
you an inference to the best explanation,
Mm,
and you grant that it's actually the best explanation,
you
insofar
granted
as
it.
any
Yeah. Well,
negation.
you built that the value exists, right? But I
No, no,
still
no,
have
no,
no.
no, 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 no. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
How
Well,
are you denying the invoking of the Morian method here?
how am I
Can you
denying the
explain that to
invoking
me?
of the Morian method? I think, okay, I might not have said it clear enough. Maybe like my pride was like getting in the way of me like expressing this. I have no clue what you're saying, dude. I don't know what the Morian method is, right?
Okay,
So
so
now
the
what I
Morian
asked you was,
method. So
mm,
let's go over it step by step. Okay, so let's identify the proposition that I'm trying to make. Right. So the proposition that I'm giving to you is that
yeah,
intrinsic value is normatively primitive. Okay. Now let's
yeah,
identify some sort of theory which would imply the negation of the proposition I'm giving to you. Okay.
okay,
I'm saying that that's going to be skepticism, or it's going to be some sort of like moral anti-realism or something like that. If it's the case that my view or my proposition is going to be more certain than the philosophical premise that would deny it, which in this case I'm explaining, then that theory or that negation should be rejected. And
yeah. Why would
insofar as
mine
the
be less?
proposition that I'm giving is inescapable, and the inescapable concept is irreducible, and in virtue of its irreducibility, it's going to be justified, then
Okay, yeah,
necessarily in an inference of the best explanation, my view is going to be more certain.
right.
Which
But
means
under
that
what
if
grounds?
my view is more certain, under this view, that functions as an ought. If it functions as an ought, then your question, why ought I follow that ought, is an infinite regress of oughts and is just nonsense.
Yeah, two things. Number one, the view you're talking about in question, like all that you've substantiated, like if everything's like conceded to, was the value, not like the moral system that acts upon the value, whether it be positive or negative. Now, the second thing is you said that like the negation to
Well, hold on.
the
The
proposition.
Morian
Wait, give me
method
a
is
second.
discussing propositions, and
Yeah,
it's discussing its relational theory, which would imply another proposition. So
yeah,
under this
exactly.
method,
That's what I
a
want to get
theory
into.
can be implied, even if it's not the exact proposition itself. That would be a fallacy to say that because it's not the exact proposition itself, therefore the theory can't be invoked in comparing
Not
the
what I said.
certainty.
But
Well, then
so
I
look,
don't understand what you're saying
you
at all,
said it,
then.
yeah. Why? Okay, so your whole entire view is like presupposed on the fact that the proposition that intrinsic value is not morally primitive would be less favorable than the fact that it is morally primitive. I feel like the fact that
Morally
it's not morally,
primitive? What does that mean?
sorry, so normatively primitive. Sorry, I wrote morally. I
Okay.
wasn't normatively. So you're basically saying that, oh, since intrinsic value being normatively primitive is more favorable than the negation, my point just like instantly substantiates itself. Why is like normal why is value being normatively primitive more favorable than the other option? I feel like the other option makes more sense. No,
Okay.
like
Can you
under
tell
what?
me can you tell
Yeah,
me how skepticism under literally any
yeah,
view,
how is that
any
skepticism?
hold on, wait, what do you think skepticism is?
No, I said how is that skepticism? Skepticism, I'm pretty sure is
Yeah,
when you're
this is
like
a clarifying
questioning
question I
something. Yeah,
need.
yeah, skepticism is when you're questioning or doubting whether or not something truly exists or is true. That's what I take skepticism to be.
Okay, sure. So skepticism in philosophy is just the view that some sort of knowledge or justification or belief is limited or difficult in some sort of domain. So a skeptic would just say that it would challenge whether our beliefs meet the standard required for
Mhm.
knowledge, right? So it
Yeah,
somewhat relates to like an epistemic domain, though.
definitely.
So when I say that this leads to skepticism, all that I'm saying is that if it is an inescapable claim, right? So that means that it's irreducible, and we're just going to invoke some sort of necessity here. Then denying or trying to deny something which is irreducible is going to be needing to lead to skepticism necessarily,
Okay, and then
because
definitely
you're
now while I'm
literally
reading,
denying something which is based and premised upon things which are not deniable in philosophy.
okay, yeah, definitely. What are the things
So
that
that's
like
what skepticism
yeah,
is. It's when you deny things because
definitely.
on the basis that, like, on the basis of basically like we're humans and blah 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 blah. Skepticism's like
Yeah,
nonsense. It's
definitely.
the claim that we don't know as much as we think we know, and
Yeah,
so
this is what
that
I was
means
trying to
that,
ask our debate that I feel
yeah.
like
So
you
that's why it
probably
leads to
understood but chose not
skepticism.
to answer.
So do you
Yeah,
understand?
so my question is, you said that it leads to skepticism when it is irreducible and is founded on other things that are undeniable, right? So
No, I
what are
didn't.
the
Whoa whoa whoa
things?
whoa 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 whoa. Hold
Wait,
on.
sorry, let
I
me
need to
clip this
clarify
now
if you.
here. Yeah,
No 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 no.
here.
Let me
No, wait, I
clarify.
have a
No no.
clip.
That might be
Let's
what
go
I'm
back word
saying.
for
I
word.
need to clear, but the way that you worded that was weird. So
Oh, then let's hear it.
if you're saying that I'm saying that skepticism is automatically
It
implied
wasn't about
if it's
skepticism.
You said that Wait, you said skepticism. Does anyone
No,
here want to back me up on the fact
look,
that he just
so
said
here,
skepticism when he
I said,
worded that back? Yeah,
said-
can you
so
clip
what
it and
you-
play
yeah.
it back in the mic what you said?
Yeah, definitely. But I was talking about what you said, right? Here, I'll
Yeah,
clip
yeah,
and
I
play
know
back.
that you were talking about what I'm saying. I'm also talking about what I'm saying, and I'm talking
Yeah.
about what you
Give me
just
one
said
second.
I
I'm hearing
said,
two of
and
you right
whether or
now.
not it was actually
Yeah.
what I said.
Yep. Give me 1 second if you want me to repeat that clip. Give me 1 quick second.
Yeah, and you said skepticism in it, and you said that
I'm
skepticism
so sorry, dude.
implies
While you're
irreducibility.
talking, I can't really like listen back to the clip. It's kind of your voice is over.
Okay, I hate to interrupt, but like I got an audience to keep here, but you're definitely gonna see it posted, and you can reply to like the thread in that and follow up on that because I'm really curious. I'd actually love to see that. Yeah, so
Yeah,
like it's just gonna be like
I'll definitely tune in to the thread. Just I might get clarified later on, but I'm pretty sure calling something a normative primitive just simply tells us what kind of a fact it is, and not that we're justified in believing that this particular instance of it. That's what I would take a normative primitive fact to be. I'm not sure how we use the Times2 in the debate, but
why you feel like it's right to control a woman's body.
First, I feel like it's perfectly fine to control a woman's body if it's protecting another life.